So welcome everyone to Apex Office Hours. We're here for Oracle Apex 22.2, Part 3, New Items and Regions. So this is Part 3 of a 4-part series on all the new features in Apex 22.2. And we got a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way here, just to let everyone know. We have conferences in 2022 coming up. Next week is Eco Fall in North Carolina in Raleigh, and UK OUG, Oracle Users Group in the UK. So if you know the whole thing about the community here, past COVID and everything else, that the Apex community is back. We're starting to attend conferences and meet people and talk about everyone's success with Apex. And of course, now that Apex 22.2 general availability is just around the corner, we're very excited to talk about all the new features and keep all the momentum with the conferences going, and have everyone excited and taking all these photos that you see shown on the slide. So today, again, this is Apex Office Hours. And so this is one of 4. Today is Apex 22.2 New Items and Regions. Upcoming is going to be PWA User and Developer Experience on November 10th. So I hope that you can make that one as well. And the other previous ones that we've had so far are all available on Apex Office Hours or the Ask Tom Office Hours website and the recordings. Please make sure you take a look at some of those. And today we're going to have Stefan Dobre and Ronny Weiss to talk about the new items and regions. And I think up first, we're going to go with Stefan. I'm really excited about this one. We're going to have a lot of new features to show everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm Stefan, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So let's get started with the first new feature, which is the dynamic content region in Apex 22.2. This page is loading a bit slowly, but let's see here. Before we can talk about the new region, let's talk about the old region. So in case you don't know, the PL SQL dynamic content region, now legacy, is a region type that developers can use to output just arbitrary HTML. If no other internal native component does the job, PL SQL dynamic content can always help. So here the actual HTML output is being generated via this HTTP package, specifically the P procedure. So we're used to this. It's a very old and simple to understand region type. Let's see, I'm using it here to output the contents of the emp table. I'm also showing the current time, but the current time seems to be a bit outdated. So let's try to refresh this region, which is not really working. So I cannot refresh this region. And I swear I have everything hooked up, but it turns out this region type was actually never refreshable. And I believe this is probably the biggest pain point of this region type. It could not be refreshed. Now let's take a look at the new dynamic content region. So notice the difference in naming. It's not PL SQL dynamic content anymore. It is simply dynamic content. And it basically does the same thing with one major difference. The HTML is not being output via http.p or whatever. It is concatenated together via whichever mechanism you choose and returned. And the return value of this function here has to be a varchar2 or a CLOB. So I've done the same output in the 2 different methods here, except now with the new region type, we can actually refresh the data. This was not possible before, and it is possible now. Before, if you wanted to refresh, you kind of had to reload the whole page, which is not very user-friendly, and also it took a lot of time, and I wonder why it took so much time to refresh this page. Let's see what else is here. Okay, so we have this other dynamic content region that has some pause function here. That's why the whole page is slow. So imagine this could also be some long-running query or some very long-lasting API call. So what do we do in such a case? If the whole page, does the whole page really have to hang if some hidden away region takes so long to load? Well, with the new region type, we can go to attributes and enable lazy loading. Let's rerun the page. And this was much faster this time. Let's do it again, much faster. And that is because the region behind this tab will really only be fetched when that region becomes visible, in our case, on the click of the tab. There it is. So the delay was pushed to when we actually have to interact with that region, greatly improving initial page load times. So this new region type, refreshable, lazy loadable, and let's see what other differences are here. I see this language select list. It didn't used to be here, now it's here, and that is because on databases that support MLE, those being 21C and now 23C, or soon, you will also find a JavaScript MLE entry right here. Currently, I'm running on a 19C database, I believe. But on compatible databases, the dynamic content region will also show a JavaScript MLE entry, which will allow a developer to write this code in JavaScript. So these are the three main differences between the PL SQL dynamic content region and the dynamic content region. During the upgrade, we won't be migrating any existing regions over to this new one, specifically because the code has to be rewritten, I should say, to really return the value as opposed to using HTTP.P. The now legacy version is not going away. It will still continue to work. It will still continue to be non-refreshable. To find it, however, you might have to click the Show Legacy option right here, and then it will pop up in the list of region types. All right, so that was feature number 1. Let's move over to feature number 2. So we have some session state updates over here. I have a plain old text area here. Let's try to paste in this large value. So I have a couple of short stories from the Grimm brothers that I'm trying to submit in my application here. And I see that this is quite a bit of content, 59,000 characters even. Okay, let's try to submit this content for some further processing on the back end. We submit, and what happened here? My content actually got truncated down to 32K, which is not ideal, right? And if you're an experienced Apex developers, you know of this limitation. In session state, Apex could not handle values larger than 32K. So that is something developers had to struggle with and find workarounds. Those workarounds being a bit hacky. And this behavior is not because we just have a hard-coded limit of 32K somewhere in our code base. It really is because the values are varchar 2 in the backend, which is limited, unfortunately, to 32K. But now, for Apex 22.2, we have done a lot of refactoring of the Apex engine. And we can now handle more complex data types. So session state values no longer have to be just varchar 2. Well, let's actually show this in our app here. So for our text area here, we can scroll down and we now see a new group called session state with a new attribute called data type. Previously, this wasn't here and varchar 2 was just implied. Now we can actually choose CLOB. So in the first iteration of this feature, in 22.2, CLOB is the new option. Let's rerun the page. My value is cleared when we make such a change. Let's paste our short stories in here again. I see 59,000 characters. We go ahead and submit the page. On reload, the entire content is still here. We have lost no data. Now, this is not just supported for a text area. We have a couple of supported items. Text area, display only, the hidden page item, the rich text editor page item, the markdown editor page item will now show this data type select list. Moreover, item type plugins can also participate in this new architecture with just a few code changes. What other implications are there? Let's see. Once you've set the data type to CLOB, whenever you work with such an item, you must ensure that setting and getting the value and validating and computing and everything really you do with it respects the data type. So computations and even the region source here, whatever you choose, really returns a CLOB and respects the data type. On the processing side, let's say you're referencing that item in a process. If you've set the data type, the bind variable will respect that data type. So in our case, P20 text area is actually a CLOB bind variable that contains that entire value. If you're outside of such a context in which Apex can bind those values, you can use an API to fetch that value. Unfortunately, you will not be able to use the v function that we're so used to, because the v function returns a varchar2, and we could not change the behavior of such a legacy API. So we've introduced a new public package called Apex Session State that has a bunch of utility functions, such as get CLOB. So whenever you work with a CLOB item, make sure you use the appropriate APIs, get CLOB, set CLOB, and so on. Going back here, that's a little overview of this new package. There's more in it, but I've included here the get varchar2 function, which is the same as the v function, but just for sake of completeness. Get CLOB we've discussed. There's two more, get number and get timestamp. While we don't yet support the number and timestamp session state data types, these will perform the conversion based on the item's format mask and return the correct data type. And also a couple of overloaded set value functions. Some other notes, we also have full interactive grid support. So all of these items will work as editable interactive grid columns that can edit CLOB values. We will not be migrating anything over to this new data type. If developers want to make the change, they can flip that switch manually. For newly created interactive grids or form regions via either Page Designer or the Builder wizards, if we notice that a form or a column is of type CLOB, the respective page item will also now be defaulted to CLOB. So that's going forward. For this first iteration, again, certain restrictions do apply. What I've described only applies to page items and not application items. Another restriction is that these CLOB page items, you cannot use them with you cannot reference these values via the substitution syntax in the backend. We're still missing a couple of APIs there, but that's a restriction we are planning to lift in future versions. All right, let's move over to our third topic of the day, some updates to the rich text editor. Here it is, a rich text editor in Apex 22.2 We have upgraded the underlying library, CKEditor 5, to version 35.0.1. So just in case you've made any sort of fancy customizations using the CKEditor 5 APIs, do check the changelog if any of those options or methods have changed. But if you haven't done any customizations, we should be good there. In terms of new features that we're adding, we have a new toolbar style. So currently, when items wouldn't fit the width of the editor, they would overflow into such a menu. Now, if we edit this page and we go here, if the format is HTML and the toolbar is either intermediate or full, we will see this toolbar style setting, which can be set to multi-line. And no matter how narrow the screen is, all items will still show. This variant is more mobile friendly, and this perhaps more desktop friendly when you really want to have all options at your fingertips and you don't wish to open the menu each time to use them. Also, this is kind of what users are used to from CKEditor 4, right? Where you really saw all of the options. The second enhancement is about custom HTML. But let's take a step back and discuss this topic, because in CKEditor 5, you used to not be able to edit the HTML behind the content. Everything was really what you see is what you get, and that is it. This is, however, not what users were used to from previous versions. For example, in CKEditor 4, you could edit, you could see the HTML, you could edit it, right? So what we've done, I believe in the last release, is we have introduced this insert HTML button that inserts some sort of container, a little widget, where users can paste or type or edit whichever HTML they choose. In my case, it's just a square. And they would see it here in line with their declarative blocks. I think this is quite an elegant solution, but it is still not quite what users were used to in CKEditor 4. So now, let's edit this page. In 22.2, we are introducing a new option called Allow Custom HTML. And this takes that feature even further. There we go. When the mode is HTML and the toolbar is set to full, you will see that option. And after enabling it, you should see a new toolbar entry here called Source. Clicking on it will finally get you the actual HTML behind your content. It is, of course, editable. Click it again to go back. And here we see our changes. So these two features combined, just this styling of the toolbar and this ability to edit the HTML, help bridge the gap between CKEditor 4 and CKEditor 5. So now that we have those two features, we can finally tackle something we kind of have to do now, which is fully get rid of CKEditor 4 from the Apex distribution. And we're not just doing this because we want to, but CKEditor 4 as a library will reach its end of life in early 2023. And we cannot keep shipping it because it will cease to receive updates. So CKEditor 4 within Apex has been deprecated since Apex 20.2, I believe. So just in case you still have any CKEditor 4 based RTEs lying around, these will be auto-migrated to CKEditor 5 when you take up Apex 22.2. What does the configuration of this upgrade look like? Well, the format will be set to HTML because CKEditor 4 could not handle Markdown. The toolbar will stay the same as before, basic, intermediate, or full. The toolbar style will be set to multi-line. This new option, allow custom HTML, will be enabled. So users will keep being able to do what they could do in CKEditor 4. However, any custom code inside of the initialization JavaScript code attribute will be commented out because it is very likely that it will simply error out because the libraries are so different. So for those impacted post upgrade, you should really take a look at all of the CKEditor instances and really make sure they work as intended. I'd also like to take this opportunity to quickly discuss rich text in general in Apex and what our recommendations are, because things are getting more and more complex. I have a very simple list here, which is that our main recommendation is to, if you have the need for a rich text in your application, go with a rich text editor based on Markdown. This is the most secure option because we really parse that Markdown and convert it to HTML ourselves in the backend and can ensure that it is safe. We also have a Markdown editor if you really want to actually type Markdown. However, if this is not enough, we do have the HTML-based RTE as well. And if you must write actual HTML in that editor, again, I would go for the HTML snippet widget. And as a last resort, if you have to have 100% control over the output, we now have this allow custom HTML option. But then again, this really takes a whole other level of understanding and security assessment, which is why we really recommend just going with Markdown, which we can guarantee that that is safe to display. All right, let's move over to a smaller feature, but one that is quite nice, which is an enhancement to the number field page item. So I have a number field right here, and I can type in anything I wish in it, right? Because I have a full keyboard at my disposal. Even if I might not need letters, I can type them. However, on mobile, we actually have the luxury of deciding what virtual keyboard the user is prompted with when populating such a field, right? So I have some screenshots here of how things currently look on iOS and on Android. If you had a number field, you would just get the full alphabetical keyboard, which is not ideal. Sometimes you even have to dig in to find the numbers, as is the case on iOS. And this is not ideal. So in 22.2, we are introducing a new setting for the number field called virtual keyboard. By default, it is text, but you can now set decimal or numeric. And let's see what those look like. For numeric, you will actually get the numeric keyboard on your mobile device and nothing more. Your mileage may vary. For example, Android does it a bit different. You also get the dash character for some reason. But the important bit is that you get numbers and not letters. You can also set it to decimal. So in addition to the numbers, you get the decimal point or separator. So very small but very neat enhancement. Also for negative values, that's why you might have the dash there. Last but not least, we have some enhancements to our map region. So under the hood, we use the map libre JavaScript library, and we have upgraded from version 1.15, I believe, to 2.1. again, this should not concern you too much unless you really have done customizations to the maps, because there have been some breaking changes between these two versions. So definitely do check out the change logs if you have. However, a more interesting enhancement we've done is to the way the map is actually rendered. Currently, the maps are composed of raster map tiles, which are basically images. So this map is made of many images which come from the server. The images are different at the various zoom levels and so on. And this is kind of the legacy way of doing maps. However, there's a newer technique, which is to use vector-based graphics for your map. And I'm really talking about the map, so not the actual points on the map here. And vector-based graphics bring a number of benefits. So these are not images, but they are, let's say, metadata or geometric shapes and such. Benefits of vector-based graphics is that you will get a better map quality. It always looks crisper, especially when you zoom in a lot. The resources that have to be transferred over the wire are much smaller in size than actual images. You do get quicker interaction as you move around the map, because you don't have to fetch new images. The browser just has to calculate some vector things. And these vector-based tiles tend to be more often updated as they are more modern. However, that's not what we're showing here. These are still the old graphics. So how do you enable the new graphics? Well, you would have to go to Component Settings and Map. And because this is an already existing application, we won't make this change for you. You will have to go and set yes to use vector tile layers, then apply your changes. For new applications, this will be defaulted to yes. So if we refresh the page, you might notice that things look crisp, but you should really try this out on your own, and you really will notice it the more you zoom in and the closer you get to houses and such. What's also important to note is that these vector-based tiles are only available if you choose one of the OpenStreetMap variants. There are none for the last two options here. So try to stick with one of the first three here and enable that component setting. And you should see some nice results. For 22.2, we will keep supporting the raster-based maps as well, and these two last ones, but the idea moving forward will be in time to switch to vector-based maps completely, as they are more modern. All right, and I think that's it for me.
That's great, Stefan. Thank you so much. Welcome, Ronny.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, it was great presentation, Stefan. Thank you. So I will go on with the next features, but I will not talk about regions. I will talk about new items and about the new technology that we introduced in Apex 22.2. And yeah, let's start. The first item I want to show is the text field of autocomplete. It's directly replacement. So when you have an app on apex.oracle.com, you directly get this new feature. It's not a thing where you have to upgrade. But you don't have to have fear about this, because it has nearly the same features, but it had some great new features integrated. And what we will get with this new feature, I will show to you. At first, we take a look onto the old item. The old item is just a simple text field with autocomplete. and you can search for some things. And as you can see, when I type A, then I get some results with A, but I also get some results that have nothing really to do with A, but I get these results just to fill this list. And this item has also a problem when we open it in small dialogues, because when I now press A, then this dialog opens here in this model dialog, but I cannot really access to the results. So the problem is I have to enlarge my model dialog. And when developers don't think about these problems, and I think when you use a low-code tool, you don't want to think about such problems, then you want to have a better solution. So let's take a look at the short comparison between the old and the new text field with autocomplete. The old text field with autocomplete was based on a library. It's called Jet. The new text field with autocomplete is completely coded by the Apex team. So it has no library included. And the great thing on this is it's now in our hand what we add to there and how it works and so on. So we are not having the problem that we need to handle things like the library does it. You have some more options, like you can always set the maximum values in the list. In the old one, this was only possible when you use lazy loading. You have a much better presentation in model dialogues. That is something I directly want to show you. When we have now our small dialog and I type A, then you can see the results are printed over this model dialog, and you have always a clean presentation of it. And what else can we see? We have now support for icons. So we don't have just these words or letters. We have now also support items. This support is only when you create a shared list here in the shared components. Because when you define your list of values directly on the items, icons are not supported. But when you define it here, then you can add also a column for the icons. You can map it to here, and then you have your icons in your item. Sorry, I have to close the dialog. The next one is cascading list of values are still working, but they are working for both. The search result respect, and that's what I told to you. When I search now for a letter here in the new text field of autocomplete, you only get results where this letter is included and not more. And so this definition of how much results do you want to see in a list is more a maximum and not that the item tries to get a full list. And the last one is you get still full interactive grid support, so you can use this item also completely in interactive grid. And the caching mode is also included like in the old item. So as you can see, we have here, it's a little bit technical for some of you, but I want to show it to you. When I press here now A, then I get an AJAX call. So the item tries to get data from the server. But when I now press C, then we get another request to the server. In some cases, also with caching, the item makes requests because it might think that you have more data. That is when you type A, you see 5 results, and there are more results than these 5. But when you have only 4 results, then the item knows you have only 4 results. And when you type another character in your search, then it does not make another request to the server because it can just filter in the already showed list. And that is this caching, and this is still included. But now with this new item, as I said, you can always set the maximum entries. So even when you disable this lazy loading, so when the results are directly loaded on page load, you can set now the maximum list in the values. Yeah, that's all about the text tree with autocomplete. I know that is not so much, but at the end, it's a text tree with autocomplete. And we don't want to break existing feature behaviors because we directly replace the item. So when you get the new Apex 22.2, you will get this new item type. And when you are a little bit more technical and you try to check the DOM tree, then you can see, oh, this is not like a div or an input. It's A minus autocomplete. And that is why we introduced with 22.2 web components. And we will transform regions and items in the future releases of Apex more and more to web components. Web components gives us much more flexibility when you think about dynamically adding items on a page or such topics. It's a little bit, this is a future topic, dynamically adding items. But also at the moment, for users that want to make client-side changes to their items, they have now a really easy API to control the item also on the client side. For the low coders, we have all the declarative settings. And you said, okay, I want to search with contains and case sensitive. I want to have a maximum list of 5 and so on. But for the more advanced users, that also works in JavaScript. They have now the option to set just the attributes of this web component HTML tag, and then this web component re-renders itself and works with these new settings. So I can change this maximum list of results just by changing the attribute. And then you have a constant API to change the handling of items on the page. I don't want to show it to you in text with autocomplete, but I want to show that to you when I show you the next item. And now we go to the next item. And that is the new date picker. This is the new date picker. I know we changed in the last years. We changed multiple times the date picker. We had our jQuery date picker. It was replaced, I think, in 21.2 or 21.1. I'm not sure. With the Jet date picker, yeah. But this is our jQuery date picker. It's deprecated since 22.1 at 21.2 or 21.1. And then we introduced the Jet date picker. But we realized from the community that our users are not really happy with this Jet date picker. There are some things not really easy when you use that. For example, many people did not know that they can click here on this month, or they can click on the year and then can change fast the year. You have problems when you are in model dialogues. It's nearly the same problem that you had with the autocomplete field. So when you open the Jet date picker here in the model dialog, you had a really strange presentation of this date picker. And then we decided, okay, let's skip all that libraries overboard. We create our own date picker. And so we decided to create a complete library-free date picker just by coding it in the Apex theme. And that's the new Apex date picker. It supports most of, or nearly all of the features that the old ones support, especially all declarative features. Let's take some steps here through this comparison. We support still all display modes that we introduced with the Jet date picker. We have this inline display mode, we have this pop-up mode, and we have this native date picker. This native date picker is very useful on mobile phones because then you have this mobile behavior that you know from your phone. We have static min max. I just want to let the user choose the last 5 days and the next 5 days. With the jet date picker, we also introduced a dynamic min-max. That is something I will show you directly now. And I will show it to you in the sample calendar app. This sample calendar app you can directly download on our GitHub. This is this version that I use now on apex.oracle.com. So if you want, you can directly try everything that I showed to you. And let's take a look at this min-max. We have the static min-max. So we say, okay, the minimum date is the 24/7th of October. We have a floating static min-max, so you can set in the declarative settings. Okay, I want to have always a minimum of maximum -7 days, and the maximum is 2 weeks in the future. And yeah, as you can see, the date picker reacts on that settings and so on. And with Jet, we also introduced this dynamic min-max. So the start reacts on what you set on the end item. So the end item is set to the 7th November. And as you can see, I can only click on the 7th of November. If a more technical user will do the following, what he can do, then this will cause a validation error on client side and also on server side, because this min-max is completely with a validation, and this validation is included directly in the date picker. Yeah, we have the option to show weeks. This is something we have had not in the jQuery date picker, and some of you will say, why not? I can activate it by JavaScript. That's true. What I show here are declarative features. Yes, with JavaScript, you can activate also this show weeks in the jQuery date picker, but declaratively, just by setting it in the page designer, it was not possible so easy. So when we take a look, let's go here. So you can easily activate this feature, just declaratively here in this settings. So you can just activate it by click. Okay, next, we can activate or disable the month and year selection. We have now a full keyboard navigation support. The old jQuery date picker had a minor keyboard navigation support. So let's take a look on this. When we use the jQuery date picker and we click into the input field, then we can navigate by page up and page down through the months, and we can activate some of this day. But what you not can do is, navigate through the days. So it's not really a good keyboard implementation. The Jet date picker is in that case much better. So you have a full keyboard navigation. The only thing that is missing when you press Shift and page up, page down, you cannot navigate the years. It still navigates through the months like it's the default behavior when you just press page up and page down. The new date picker completely does support all that stuff. So you can also navigate here by tab. You can press page up, page down to navigate through the months. You can navigate through years with Shift, page up, page down. So you can use the date picker very, very fast by using keyboard navigation. That was also a problem we had in the Jet date picker, because when we navigate in the Jet date picker, we have always this animation. And then you cannot really navigate fast in the date picker. Okay, we can change the time increment. So for many users, it's important that when they want to pick a time, then they want to make this list here a little bit shorter now. We introduced that with the Jet date picker, And the new date picker also supports that. So when we take a look into the page designer, we can set here a time increment. We can say, okay, I want to have every minute. I want to have every 5 minutes, or I want to have every 15 minutes. Yes. That is something I will skip at the moment. This is something I want to show at the end. It's a little bit dismissed here in the sorting. We have again our today button. I know many users love this today button in the jQuery date picker, and it was missed in the Jet date picker. When we go into our sample calendar app demo, then we have again this today button. And with just one click, we can set, okay, please set today as date. The next thing is the clear button. I was wondered a little bit because no one of the older date pickers had this feature. And it makes only sense when you are in the inline view mode. And it's the only display mode where you can activate this clear button. But in the past, when you have the inline mode, how should you clear the value of the item? It's impossible. You need to add a new button with a dynamic action, and then you could clear the value. But in the new date picker, you can easily activate the feature clear, and then you cleared the value of the item. You have still complete interactive grid support. We can take a short look into this. When you go onto edit mode, then the new date picker opens. And what we else have changed when you are in the filter, then you also get the new date picker with the today button. So we can say, okay, we want to say, let's show only results that are newer than today. You set the filter, then you see we only get results newer than the 3rd of November. And we also added the new date picker in the interactive report dialog. So when we go to the interactive report, then we also have here the new date picker, also with the today button. Okay, let's go back to the comparison. We have a JavaScript API. It's different to the API that you have to jQuery. So when you have now jQuery date pickers and you have custom JavaScript code, then you have to change this JavaScript code when you want to use the new date picker. The date picker is not introduced automatically. We have at the moment when you have your legacy app or your existing app, you still have your jQuery date picker and your Jet date picker, and you can use the new one, but you can still use the old ones. You have an upgrade script, so you can use the application upgrade to the new one. But when you use, as I said, custom JavaScript code, then you have maybe to customize that. But the great thing is now, because we are using web components, you can just by changing the attributes of the date picker to something different, you can switch the settings of the date picker on runtime. So when I want to have an inline date picker, then I just change the settings, and I have now on runtime my inline date picker. You can also change other settings, and then you can activate ISOVeeks, or you can change the time increment. All that you can do on runtime just by changing these attributes. And that is the great thing on web components. You have now the power just by changing attributes to control the page items on runtime. And that's the new JavaScript API for that. The last two things was we have this show days outside of months. So when you have here these days, then you can make this selectable or hidden. This was not possible with the old jQuery date picker. And we have this show on. This is still the same like with the old ones. And one last thing that I want to show you is the day formatter. We have now an API for the new one, But I have to say, you also had the chance to do this with the jQuery and the Jet date picker. But now it's a little bit easier because with 22.2, we deliver you a plugin as add-on for the new date picker. And as you can see here in that date picker, I use the plugin, and this plugin does the following. You can use SQL, or you can load an ICS file. Maybe we can take a look into the page designer so you get a better understanding what I mean in that case. So we will ship with 22.2 also a plugin on GitHub. And on this plugin, you can load ICS files or a SQL query and can set as affected element the date picker item. And then when you check the date picker, where is it? Let's start the page again. Then we can see in that case the holidays of the US in the date picker item. This API or this plugin just uses a JavaScript functionality that we introduced with the new date picker. So you have the option with just a small code to format every days. So you can add classes to days. You can add tooltips to days, and you can disable or activate days. At the moment, this does not affect keyboard navigation. You cannot select these days. This is not possible. And it's not validated. So this is just an optical feature. So when you want to have this validated, you have to add at the moment a manual validation. But this feature was just an, let's call it add-on on the new date picker to bring users to use this new date picker and to replace the old ones. And I think it's a cool new feature because now I have the option, I can easily disable the weekends. So users can only select working days. And at the end, you just set a JavaScript functionality to the date picker that is called for each day. When this day is rendered, it calls your function, sets, okay, I have this day, and you decide if this day is disabled, gets a class or a tooltip, and that's it. But when you have nothing to do with JavaScript, you just want to use this as declarative setting, then you get this plugin. And this plugin you can also download from GitHub, and you can easily download it and use it with the date picker. And this also works in the interactive grid. So when we are in the interactive grid, then we also have here our date formatting. You can easily download the sample calendar, the sample calendar app. There is the plugin included. There are all these examples included, and then you can try out all these things with the new date picker. Okay, that was it from me.
That's great, Ronny. Thank you for so much new information, so many new features on the date component there. We do have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. One question that keeps coming up over and over again, not just during this office hours, but in the past, was, are we going to have the ability to support a date range within the date picker, like when we're booking things, booking travel? Not right now?
Not at the moment. You can use it as I showed it in my example. You have 2 items with this dynamic min-max, but we have not one item where you directly can set this range. It's planned for future releases. And the good thing is we have now the chance to add this because now the complete date picker code is created by the Apex team. So we have no problems with libraries that does not support all that stuff. So we have the real chance now to implement this, and it's our plan for future releases.
That's great. Mohammed's asked another question here. Is it possible to make calendar use year and months only and neglect dates? Like, for example, using calendar to choose credit card expiration month.
The question is, how do you select? You have always the day selector. That is the problem. But you can use a date format mask that is minus epsilon. So it is possible, but you will see this calendar grid when you open the date picker. So maybe in that case, I would, even because of usability things, I would still add two select lists where I select the month and the year. And this is a common behavior most of the websites use for this use case for credit cards.
Okay. So on calendar week numbers, are these based on the locale's week number calculation or ISO based?
At the moment, it's based on the ISO week. But yeah, as I said, when users really have the wish that we need to support there more weeks than the ISO week, we can add this easily. So it's possible. Also, what I showed you with the plugin. At the moment, we have still the limitation of this 15 plugin attributes. That's why this functionality with this day formatting is not directly included in the date picker. But when people like this feature with this plugin and we have more options in future, then why not integrate this directly into the date picker?
Right. Well, that's great. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for Q&A this morning, in most cases, the afternoon, depending where you are in the world. But Ronny, thank you so much for your time today. And Stefan, we really appreciate your effort in explaining all these more complex new features. And we're just very excited about the upcoming new release of 22.2. It'll be general availability probably within the next little while, but you can use Apex 22.2 right now on apex@oracle.com. It's currently in a pre-released update, and you can go ahead and play with all these new features that everyone's talked about in all these office hours sessions we've had. And we have one more coming up in the next week to continue talking about all these great new features. And hopefully with your feedback, we'll continue to make Apex the best low-code platform on the planet. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time today. And that's it. We'll see you next time, everyone. Thank you and goodbye.